Thank you, everyone, for being there. It's a great pleasure. It's a great also surprise to see how much attention this series of webinars has caught. I'm delighted to have over 100 people attending. I'll just cut to the chase, as we usually say, and start sharing my screen so that we can move on and start with the presentation. So I just want to stress a little bit more that this is a series of webinars. So we're going to have 4 sessions. We have decided to make it in this format so that you can actually have small slots of time to focus on different items all around project proposal development. There may be many questions that you have today that will be answered in the subsequent sessions. So bear with us that this is a comprehensive 4 sessions devoted to all these questions. So I will not go over a lot about myself, but I do have 25 years of experience working both with civil society organizations and with donor agencies, mainly with the European Commission. So I have been suffering or enjoying calls for proposals, and I have been also designing calls for proposals and evaluating proposals. So I know how it works from both sides of the coin, so to speak. I'm part of the team of the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Facility as the help desk. So you have there my email in case you have other questions. And in the QR, you have my LinkedIn profile in case you want to connect with me. So today we're going to do a small introduction to project design and project management. We're going to go over the general structure of logical framework approach as main project design approach or method. We're going to talk about concept notes, how the whole, let's say, calls for proposals mechanism works. And we're going to go over briefly about what project management is, what it entails, the main components, and a few elements there. So I would like to go over a general understanding of how EU-funded calls for proposals work. First, the EU delegations have an internal discussion on how they want to do their programming, and they have their annual work program, the way they're going to approach each year. And as part of that element of programming, of planning, they decide on a call for proposals, work on the guidelines, and publish guidelines. And that's kind of like the starting point of, let's not say a race, but yes, of a whole process of how to go about preparing proposals, winning proposals, and afterwards, if you're awarded a contract, implementing those projects. With the publication of the guidelines, you have up to minimum 45 days until you have to submit your concept notes. Okay, concept notes, we will see later, are short documents, maximum 5 pages, in which you have to explain what's the idea that you're proposing for that call for proposals. What's your core message about that call for proposals? Then the delegation will have some time to actually assess and evaluate all those concept notes, and send those that are selected an invitation to participate, a short list for the best concept notes, an invitation to submit the full proposal. Full proposals are, and then you will have 45 days to prepare your full proposals, minimum. And then you will have, it's a longer document, over 25 pages, in which you have to go into detail how you plan to do all those things that you mentioned in your concept note. Then after a maximum of 180 days, the full proposals are evaluated and a grant contract is prepared, and then a signature of grant contracts, and then the project, let's say, starts. In that process, the concept note evaluation and the full proposal evaluation is assessed or evaluated by an evaluation committee. That it's very important. It's a body that transparently and objectively assesses all those proposals. And it's important to have in mind how the whole process works in terms of workload for the preparation of concept notes and workload for full proposal preparation and time that you will have. So basically, you will have to balance all these timings to fit your needs. Okay, so you will have to understand that there will be a gap of time here. I mean, all these actually, this figure is adapted from Prague. Prague is a key document that you will need to know or at least familiarize yourself, because it's a practical guide to external external contracts, and grants is a part of that. And that's where all the regulation is explained in there. Now, you will have to plan in your whole process what you're going to do with this gap of time, because very often civil society organizations, people just say, okay, I'll just send the concept note because it's a relatively small effort. It's only 5 pages. And then if I'm invited, I will prepare the full proposal. Well, that's not what I recommend. You need to do a lot of work for the concept note and still work on your proposal during this interim period of time where it's being assessed, because you trust that you're going to be selected, because your concept note should be strong enough. If you don't get past that time, that's tough. But if you get invited to your full proposal, you will be better prepared if you already do some things in here. So we're going to see the strong competition. These call for proposals are usually quite a strong competition element. And I'm offering here for yourselves some sort of checklist to assess the call for proposals for your decision making. Should I go? Should I participate? So it's a matter of assessing the guidelines. You have to assess are we eligible? Does this call for proposal fund what we do? Do we do what they fund? Do we have the capacity, or do we need partners? Is it worth it? Is it a big contract? Is it a big opportunity, or it's not that big? Can we be competitive? All those type of things, it's something that you have to assess yourself against the conditions and the requirements in the call for proposals, and take your decision considering all these elements. Now, project design is a concept that it's a particular part of what EU-funded grants are. And project design is a process, as I highlight here, that should be structured, participatory, and results-oriented. That provides you with the most appropriate and feasible way to address a development problem. So it's about a structure. It's about how you make the design or the outline of what you're going to do to achieve a certain resolution of a problem. So for that, you cannot jump ahead to say, hey, well, this is my solution. This is what I want to do. The process starts with a thorough analysis of the problem. It's like, what happens? Why is it a problem? what are the causes of those problems. And all that analysis needs to be undertaken in a certain way to actually have a solid and strong design in your concept note. Why? Because design is something that is assessed at concept note stage. So the concept of design is inherent at the concept note stage. And how do we do it? Well, the logical framework approach provides us with the steps to actually undertake that thorough analysis of the problem and structure and design our intervention, our project in the most solid way. Okay, so just for you to see, this is the concept note grid for the concept note evaluation grid. In every guidelines that are published by the delegations, they also follow a template for that. And these are standard questions that they will use to assess your concept notes. So, and they will, it's explicitly saying design of the action. How coherent is the overall design of the action? Does the proposal indicate the expected results to be achieved? Does the intervention logic explain the rationale to achieve the expected results? This is something that we will see actually on the third session of the webinar series. What's an intervention logic and how it works and how we can build it. But just for you to see that at concept note stage, we will have an analysis of the design. Again, another question that comes up here is, does the design reflect a robust analysis of the problem and the capacity of the relevant stakeholders? So they're asking you about how much you know about your stakeholders, the people you're going to be working with. And we will be talking about stakeholders and people in projects on Wednesday, on the session number 2 of this series of webinars. Have you taken into account external factors, risks, and assumptions? It's something that you also have to incorporate in your analysis. Are the activities feasible? Are they realistic? And a number of other relevant cross-cutting elements. But just for you to know that these are the type of questions that they will use when assessing your concept notes. And again, you only have 5 pages to explain all these things. So you have to really follow through some sort of a method. I would like at this point to also engage a little bit with you. There was a picture of a jigsaw puzzle. I don't know, you know, all those pieces that you have to put together when you're a kid, usually, or maybe even adults have it as a hobby. But I'm launching here an open question for you to explain, how do you do a jigsaw puzzle? What's the first thing you do when you have to solve a jigsaw puzzle? Okay, great. Starting with the frame, start at the edges, measure and visualize, understand the task. Step by step is a little bit too generic. Finding edges and filling the central part, never done it. Okay, good. I have an overall visibility of the end result. Start with the edges, have the big picture in mind. Great. Looking for highlighted parts, patterns, starting with that. Usually also colors, try to group the similarities. Great. Starting with the edges, great. Grouping elements, grouping and starting with edges. Start with the frame, looking into the big picture, paying attention to the colors, big picture analysis. Perfect. And now you can see here that edges takes 9 answers, big picture is 4, frame is 4, shaping the frame, then patterns. Okay, this is exactly what happens. Artificial intelligence. Here we go. Colors, parts of the pictures that are already visible. Okay, you got the. I have the picture, frame, similarities, and this happens all the time. This happens all the time. Then it's when I come and say, hey, when I start with the jigsaw puzzle, the first thing I do is I turn upside down all the pieces, because no one thinks of turning the pieces out before starting. It's like you assume that that's already done, and it's not the case. Okay, so I have enough answers. Thank you very much. I just wanted to send a message that there is a method, and the method, you cannot jump steps. And with jigsaw puzzles, very often it happens that you just jump into, yeah, the frames, the edges or the colors, but there's previous steps that you need to take. And this is what the logical framework approach is about. And here, I will be very happy if we finish this session with this very clear idea here, all of us. The logical framework approach and the logical framework matrix is not the same thing. The log frame matrix that is requested at full application, and it's requested in almost by all donors. There's some form of log frame in which you have your columns and your rows. It's a way to structure information that comes from the logical framework approach. And the logical framework approach is something, it's a process, it's something that you have to do step by step. It's a structure, it's the instructions of that jigsaw puzzle without jumping any step. So what we do, and we will see that a little bit more in detail on Friday, on the third session, we have to go through all these analysis in order to answer to that one question that we said, does this concept note indicate a thorough analysis of the problem? Well, you have to do stakeholder analysis and problem analysis and objective analysis before having an idea how you're going to address your strategy to solve that problem. So the logical framework approach, it's a process that is structured, participative, results-oriented. It's not activity-oriented. That comes at the end. And it provides you with intervention logic, with the rationale. So it's answering those questions. This is a diagram that I have created for a publication. So you have your analysis phase, and I have separated the steps, the what you have to do from the outputs. And you will see that the output of the whole analysis and design is the logical framework approach, is the logical framework matrix as a whole. But at concept note, it's very advisable, let's say, to do all the analysis, all the problem analysis, all the stakeholder analysis in order to have a strong project structure. Then at full application, you will be able to do all the rest of the elements in a log frame. But the important message here is the logical framework approach are a number of steps that you have to do in a participative way, and it yields to a logical framework matrix. Of course, you can fill in the log frame matrix in your applications by yourself. You can use it as a template just to fill in. But then you're missing the step of going to the people, discussing, finding out relationships, finding out why things happen, and figuring out best ways to approach those problems and find better solutions. So don't take the logical framework matrix as a template that you have to fill in. Is the final result, the final output of a process of having a lot of dialogue, a lot of interaction, a lot of analysis with the people, within yourselves, to actually have that structure. Okay, so this is the log frame, or an example of log frame. And because relevance and design are essentially here, and its relevance is about alignment and design is about coherence, is about basically this column, what you're going to do, how it is linked to what you plan to achieve. right? So at log frame, at concept note, it's important that as part of your log frame matrix, you have this result chain, the intervention logic here very strongly. You also have to do your risk analysis or your assumptions and have a slight estimation of what you plan to do and what you need to do those things, right? Then at full application, you will have to complete the whole process and actually fill in all your baseline, your indicators, explain how you're going to be monitoring, and have not only an estimation, but of course, a more detailed account of how long you're going to take for each task, for each activity, how much budget you need. So at full application, you have other workload to actually fill in and complete the whole process. Okay, I just want to highlight how your concept notes will be evaluated. And I'm making a little bit of a stressful point here at concept notes because those are the gates. Concept note is the yes or no, and it's where most people see concept notes like, oh yeah, it's only 5 pages, so we'll just fill in the idea and we don't need to work a lot on concept notes. If we get passed through concept notes, we will work on the proposal. It's the other way around. Let's work very strongly on the concept note, because the more you work on your concept note, more chances you have to pass and to work more later on the full application. Of course, concept notes have a maximum score of 50 points, and there's a quality threshold for 30 points. So if you don't get minimum 30 points, you don't even get considered. But the truth is that because of the competition, even if you get 30, if there are 5 or 6 that have 42, 45, 43, those are the ones that will pass, because what they do is they cut at a certain moment according also to the availability of funds. So even if you have 35 or 36, may not be enough to pass the cutting line. This is what it's here. They will be ranked by score, and the highest will be pre-selected until a limit of at least 200% of the available fund budget. Okay, so it's important. I mean, my message is invest in following the logical framework approach in terms of all the steps for your problem analysis very thoroughly before you submit your concept note, because that will yield good results in terms of coherence, design, and also, as we will see, also relevance. So to maximize those scores, the points that we need, we have to be very aware that the concept note will be the sole information that we can provide. So that's those 5 pages. We cannot introduce hyperlinks or references, but we know the criteria that will be used. We know the questions that they will have to answer during the assessment, and we have to understand how the evaluation committee works. It's usually 2, 3, 5 people. There's not going to be a lot of people reading your concept notes, but all of them will have to go through those questions. And we have to understand that we have to make it easy for the evaluation committee, for the people that will be reading our concept notes, make it easy for them to understand what we want to achieve. So it's those 3 pieces of information have to guide you when preparing your concept notes to actually maximize your impact in terms of scores for your concept notes. Now, very briefly, some concept note tips. As I'm mentioning, I want to insist on this. Make a plan for your concept note. You know that you will have to follow a number of steps. The steps are not directly correlated with the template. So, but don't jump into filling in the template. Gather all the information, make all the analysis, have all the consultations that you need, and gather everything before you start filling in the blanks in the template. The participation in the concept note is not about filling in a template of 5 pages. It's about following a process and constructing something very solid in terms of credibility, in terms of logical internal steps that follow one after the other. And that needs a plan. Of course, there will be aspects, technical aspects, like having to be uploading your applications in Prospect. So don't leave your proposals for the last day. The first step, like I was saying with the jigsaw puzzle, is about turning up the pieces, and that's our stakeholder mapping. That's about who are we working with, with what people, or the problems for whom. So we need to have that exercise to define target groups and final beneficiaries, and we will define those terms on Wednesday. So actually, it's very important that we follow that initial step at the very beginning. So we will have to also to analyze the problem, collect information, as I was saying, identify how you propose to solve that problem, and make us an estimation, and ensure alignment with the objectives and priorities of the call. Okay, so in terms of you need to be thinking when approaching projects, not on what you want to do, or not on the activities you're going to be undertaking. I'm going to do this, and this. No, that's not how it works. This is what I'm going to change. This is what I'm going to achieve. So you have to be thinking on terms of change. What do you want to change in terms of policy, or in terms of practice, or in terms of behavior, or a combination, of course, of all the three. Who will be affected by the change? Who will benefit from the intervention? How will that happen? All those elements in terms of change for the reality are important that are present in your proposals. In terms of drafting tips, there are always rules in terms of even font size, and you have to stick to all those things. As I was saying, be mindful that your evaluation committee will be reading your proposals. So don't construct very complicated concepts, or just try to be clear and specific, write with short sentences, be very clear and defined. And it's good that you gather all that analysis, all that information, and define the bullet points of your key messages, and see where they go to answer the questions in the evaluation grid. And of course, we always finish our work over the deadline, but that's why it's important to finish a couple of days before, not only because of the internet question about how it will be very difficult to upload on the last day, but it's also because it's very good to have a double eye review. Have someone from a little bit outside the proposal, maybe from your organization, but not directly working with the proposal, to read it. Because very often when we are inside the work of drafting, we don't see, we assume many elements. It's like, oh, well, this is obvious for me, but it may not be obvious for someone else. So it's important that someone with a fresh pair of eyes read the whole thing and highlights what's not very clear. I don't understand this. We will need to strengthen this message. all those type of comments, that's very important to have it at the last revision before submitting. Okay, so this is more or less the general idea about how to participate in culture proposals. And now I would like to define and talk a little bit about what project management and how it goes in EU-funded projects. Again, we have instructions for your PACL in terms of design with a logical framework approach, and we have instructions or steps, methodology for project management. Now, project management is again a structured process, but it works for planning, for executing, for monitoring, for closing, to achieve the specific goals. So all of that, we are working under given constraints, time, budget, scope, but also we have to adhere and follow regulations, the contract conditions. We have to deal with our stakeholders and our partners. We have to follow our financial rules. We have to be mindful of our risk and the change that happens throughout the project. We have to be mindful of quality, of communications, reporting. So we have many different dimensions about what happens around the project, and we need to be considering those. And that happens throughout the whole project cycle, from the very beginning. From the moment you decide you're going to be submitting a concept note, that happens because you're going to have resources, you're going to have people working on those on that concept note, and those are resources, and risks are going to happen, and communication needs to happen. So all these elements need to be managed throughout the whole process, from drafting the concept note until the very end, when we finish the implementation or the execution of our project, and we have to close it and send the final report. So it's something that happens throughout the whole life cycle. And all these, I was mentioning all these elements, but I wanted to put them here together with these, because this is something very intuitive. We all have a notion of the importance of balancing the budget and the schedule and the list of tasks. Basically, the scope is what we have to do. The time is, and the deadlines are super important. Of course, we can't go over budget, and we want to achieve a certain level of quality. This is a very old-fashioned approach to project management, but it's very intuitive, as I was saying. In reality, what's in the center is the objectives, the change we want to bring about, the impact. And then we have to balance and manage all these other elements. Of course, cost, activity, time, and quality are there, but also our deliverables, our people, our requirements, our context, our risks, our changing environment. All those elements we need to focus on them. How do we do that? We do that through project management, which is more than just managing. It's actually a professional and standardized activity. I just wanted to mention to you that there are a number of different approaches and methods and standards to project management, internationally recognized. It's not something that someone has invented. This comes, well, imagine from throughout history. I mean, it's impossible to think of, having the pyramids built or any other big endeavor without some sort of project management. Anyway, there's been a growth in this professional activity, and the European Commission has PM Square, which is the project management methodology of the European Commission, that is structured about very simple principles. There's a pillar for governance, for the people within the project management structure, the life cycle, the when things happen, processes, and artifacts. Artifacts are templates that are used to support project management activities. So here you have an outline of all the activities throughout the different life cycle and the artifacts. So basically, PM Square is a structured way to approach project management as the discipline that will guide you in the management of all these areas that I have just mentioned. Now, I'm not going to go in a lot of detail about PM Square because at the EAP e-learning hub, you can find, I gave a webinar specifically on PM Square, and with that QR, you get the link directly to that other webinar that you can watch at any point in time to actually explain how all this works throughout the life cycle of your projects. So I'm gonna wrap up very briefly. And you have here, I have just stuck all the key images from the session. E-funded projects are very complex and competitive, generally organized in 2 steps, concept note and full application. And you have to be very incisive in how you do your analysis phase and your design, at least up to project structure at the concept note stage, because design and relevance will be measured at the beginning of the concept note. And then you will have time at full application to actually fill in the rest of the logical framework matrix. So key idea is that the logical framework approach is different from the logical framework matrix. The logical framework approach is a process, whereas the logical framework matrix is a document. And in terms of project management, it goes the same. We cannot focus only on cost and time and activities, but we have to be mindful of all the elements that we need to manage throughout the project lifecycle. And for that, we have preferably PM Square, but you have other approaches, but PM Square is the project management methodology of the European Commission that works as the instructions for the jigsaw puzzle that makes all those little pieces that do not fit should try to fit. And that's it. It took me a little bit longer than I had expected, but we still have like 10-15 minutes for questions and answers. I really appreciate. Thank you very much for your attention. I have a last slide, but I will leave that for after the questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Agustin. We had a few questions, and thank you to those of you using the Q&A. I think we managed to respond to most that were about getting hold of the recording of the webinar and the supporting materials. But we have one question for you about how and when the logical framework should be developed. The question is asking, Agustin, is this something that should be done separately from the application as an internal exercise? Or is it something that will be incorporated anyway into the call for proposals with questions within the application? I know that we're going to have a webinar on Friday, which is very much devoted to this subject, but maybe you can briefly respond on that.
I can advance that. The logical framework matrix is actually a standalone document that you will have to submit at your full application stage. So if you pass your concept note and you're invited, you will have to develop a full-fledged document for a log frame matrix, as I was saying. But my message here is that you need to start undertaking the logical framework steps in terms of stakeholder mapping and problem analysis for the concept note so that you have a logical structure before you submit your logical framework matrix. I know this logical repetition of words is often maybe confusing, but I hope the message is clear.
Great, thanks, Agustin. if the one answering that question, if you want to ask more, go ahead, or you wait until Friday, join the webinar then. But we have another question, which is from Anatoly. And Augustine, maybe this is not so easy for you to answer because we can't answer specific questions about getting funding for different kinds of things. But Anatoly is asking this question, can I apply for funding for socially useful projects outside the list of grants that the EU is asking for?
I don't quite get the question, but you can always apply for your projects. Now, the way it works, the delegations in our countries, let's say, they open these calls for proposals and they decide what are the key priorities and what are the overall objectives that they want to achieve. It's as I was saying at the beginning, they have an overall programming, and each year they will decide, okay, this year we're going to go for, let's say, socially useful projects. If they are launching a call that is in line with what you do in your organization, then that's perfect. But you will have to assess how aligned is that, because that will be the relevance criteria. I mean, how aligned your proposal is with what I want to achieve as European Commission. I hope I answered that question.
Maybe additional comment, Augustine, from my side would be that Anatoly, it depends on the kind of the size of your organization and what level of funding you require. But you should remember that some EU funding is actually channeled through large civil society organizations who are given funding which they can then subgrant or re-grant. So you need to be able to keep an eye on funding opportunities from a range of different sources in your country. The EU website is a great place to start with, but you should widen your search for funding, because there is some EU funding which is managed through partners, civil society partners of the EU.
True.
There was another.
Thank you, Simon. It's called financial support to third parties. And yes, there may be options to get funding through other civil society organizations. Yeah.
We have a question from Lilith. I'm not quite sure what this really means, but I think you might have answered it already. The question is, in which stage should be our idea or our seed as these be sent as requests for EU funding?
Well, actually, this two-step process is a little bit those seed and full and grown plant already stages. The delegations, the EU funded is organizing these two steps to actually save time for yourselves, but also save time for the evaluation. So it's a pre-selection. So actually, your seed project idea will be the concept note. And then if you're selected and invited to present a more developed idea, then you will have to work throughout all those 45 days to have a more developed request in that sense.
We have a couple of questions from Anna. Anna, thank you very much. You've been very active in asking questions, which is great. First one, Augustine, this is going back to the logical framework tool. Anna is asking, are there any other matrices which will be useful in this stage? And where may we start the research for best practices?
Okay, yes, there are other matrices. We will see on Wednesday some tools to actually support you in your stakeholder analysis. So we will have some practices there. Also, and I discussed this with Simon, I will compile at the end for the last session a list of links or bibliography or best practices that you can start your research with. But in general terms, the logical framework approach and project cycle management is part of there are lots of resources, and I will try to summarize some of those in a document for you all, so that you can start that research on best practices from that starting point.
Thank you, Agustin. And Anwar has a second question, and that is, does the organization's experience in a relevant field increase the chances of getting funded? Or alternatively, the question is, may the youth organization in terms of experience get grants? So can an inexperienced organization get funding?
Yes, at full application stage, the experience of the applicants, both the lead applicant and the partners, if there are assessed. It is true that there is a certain threshold of experience that is required, but not in all of the call for proposals. I mean, it's not 100% for all calls for proposals that you have to have previous experience. In any case, as Simon was saying before, these mechanisms for financial support to third parties of sub-granting allow for youth organizations or less experienced organizations to actually deal with grants mechanisms and EU funding at a smaller scale, to start building their experience from those levels.
And we have a question from Nina, which is a question really about trying to understand more the EU's programming decision-making. Nina's asking, I would like to ask you if there is a reason when some EU calls have a two-stage process and some go directly to the full application. She says, I mostly have experience with regional EU calls where a full application was required right away.
Yeah, there is a reason, but that reason is usually only known to those deciding on that specific procedure. If you read through the practical guide, it mentions that the standard procedure is 2 stages. If they want to go for a one-step procedure, they have to explain it internally, not externally, but they have to explain it internally. It's usually related with time constraints, because in the end, a one-step procedure is just a shortened 2 steps, because you still have to prepare your concept note and your full application, but you have to submit them all together, and they will do the evaluation actually in those 2 steps. They will just go through the concept notes, select the concept notes, and then pass to the full application. So basically, it's usually a matter of time constraint in terms of wanting to have the resulting award of contracts faster for some reason. That's usually how it goes.
Great. We are coming up just about to the 1 hour mark of the webinar, and we said that would be the end of it. But we have one more question, Augustine, for you. It's from an anonymous asker. And the question is, are there exceptional instances when NGOs can be eligible to apply for a call for proposals without being based in the target country, not being based in an EU member state, and without having local partners? This may be due to existing difficulties with such partnerships, but the former has a strong history of working on the target country in the online space.
I'm afraid I'm not a position to answer something. I mean, I can give you my opinion, but my opinion is that you will need to build up a case or ask before the EU delegation. I mean, in those countries, and there are several or some contexts in our region that are difficult, there are exceptional mechanisms in place to actually do things differently to how things normally work. So I do not have a direct answer. There are exceptions, but in general terms, I have to say that the EU is quite strong defendant of having EU beneficiaries being benefiting from EU funds. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have. I haven't ever seen, let's say, for something crazy, a Chinese organization applying for EU funds. It wouldn't make sense. It would be very difficult to justify providing funds to a Chinese organization, no matter how strong links they have with other organizations in the field. But rules are there, and exceptions are also there for all the rules. So I don't know.
And Augustine, there's another quite tricky one for you, which also you need to have a full understanding of the context probably to answer it. But Lynn is asking, if the applicant is a new organization, as a cohort of experienced applicants, will it be considered as a new organization, or having a strong board of those organizations in the new foundation, will it be considered feasible? I'm not quite sure I fully understand the question.
Yeah, in terms of when you have partnerships, when you have different organizations going together, applying together, it is usually considered the balance between or the capacity from all the applicants. Usually, having a lead applicant that has previous experience provides you better chances to be considered. So if you want to start applying, if you want to start having experience with EU funds, and you're just a new organization, even though if your board has people with experience, if they will be asking for registration dates and for how many years you have been active. So, okay, if your lead partner has 10 years of experience, but you have 0, that should not be a problem, for example, because they will cover and they will be taking care and actually coaching you and supporting that. So the EU funds are about also building up capacities. So it's not like, hey, this is not like tendering. This is not like I want a company that to work this for me. The logic is different. The logic is, hey, I want to find partners. I want to build up capacity. I want to get ideas. So I will encourage you to find partners that have experience, go together and grow together in that practice and experience.
Thank you very much, Augustine. That is our last question, which is perfectly on time, and we will stop the recording.